With this video, I'm reaching back into my very early adulthood, my early 20s. I fretted a lot about having a wife and a family, and it was kind of feeling like desperation. I don't know why. I mean, I was 20 years old, but I think it was the fact that I didn't know, and I really wanted to have a wife and have a good family and harmonious family, and it wasn't happening. I'm sure I was a bit impatient, but I began probably when I was about 21-ish. I was staying with my folks in Topeka, going to Washburn University and working part-time. And I remember this anxiety got the best of me, and I began to pray even vocally and on my knees, that I might find a wife and have a good family. And after a few nights of this pleading, I began to have conversations in that point of sleep that's in between being awake and being asleep. Only I could only hear one side of the conversation, and that was mine, and I'm not sure what was said. I didn't often remember. I just recognized that I was actually speaking to someone. And this went on for many weeks, most every night. And I don't know, I guess it just faded and I didn't think about it much anymore. And about probably 2-3 years later, I had been invited to go out and play some golf with a friend. And then afterwards, it was getting close to evening, he suggested that we go to a nightclub called Grandmother's in Topeka. And I was not one to go to nightclubs. I didn't enjoy that setting. I did not drink much. A little bit, but not much. And so I didn't really want to, but for some reason I said, yeah, okay. And so I went with him, and we sat with a table of a lot of his friends that I did not know. And I just didn't feel comfortable at that table. So gradually, little by little, I kind of backed away from that table. And just virtually kept backing up until I was practically, or for all purposes, at the table behind me. And at that moment, when I realized that, gosh, I'm clear away from this table, the Spirit spoke to me and said, turn around and see your wife. And I turned around, and your mother was sitting there with a friend, and interestingly, there was a exhaust fan on the wall next to her with a street light out in the parking lot, and it wasn't really turned on. It was just kind of turning slowly with the breeze that was coming through, and it was very impactful, and it was just on her. And it was kind of like one of those things you would see in the movie. I knew immediately that that was my wife. So I turned around and asked if I could join them, and we talked and had a really delightful time. Afterwards, we took her friend home, or she took her friend home, and I met her at the house that she was renting. I must have been 23, 24. And she was 20. We virtually stayed up the whole night talking. And early in the next morning, I went back to my folks' place, and my mom was up and getting around. And I turned to her, or I said to my mom, Mom, I just met my wife tonight. And she smiled and she said, I knew you would. So that's the story of how I met your wife. Now the courtship that's a whole different story, because quite frankly, I think your mom didn't really like me that much. So I had to work hard and chase her until she finally caught me. So that's the story of how we met.